Hi everyone, Dreki here, and today we're reviewing the Firefly 8S. This camera has fast overtaken the ThiEYE T5e as one of my favorite action cameras to date, because it has the same photo and video quality, but there are other improvements in the camera such as user interface and stabilization. The Firefly 8S isn't without its flaws, but it does have pretty great overall video and photo quality for the price, and that makes it one of the better value cameras to date. To start, the build quality of the Firefly 8S is about average for a camera in its price range. The waterproof case does not include the additional latch, however the buttons operate much more smooth than some other cameras I've tested, most notably the ThiEYE T5e. The other interesting quirk which it shares with other Firefly cameras is that there's only one button on the side of the waterproof case. Instead of going up and down in menus, this only lets you go down, and to adjust options more accurately it's easiest with the waterproof case open, because there's actually two buttons inside the camera. Almost everything that you need is accessible with the waterproof case closed, except for the playback menu. Outside of the waterproof case, the camera feels about average for something in its price range. The front of the camera has a reflective selfie mirror, and the back of the camera has the micro SD slot, which is a little bit interesting. The buttons feel quite nice to operate, but the real winner is the menus. The menu system on this camera is much more refined than other cameras like the T5e. Image settings and overall settings are broken into two different groups, meaning that the menus are overall more organized and easier to navigate. In terms of what's included in the box, well, I advise watching the unboxing video, otherwise this one's going to take up too much time. Let's move on to the video quality. This camera shoots real 4K at 30 frames per second, and in the daytime the results are very good. Details are sharp, color is accurate, and exposure is good. I found in a few places that the exposure tends to be a little bit on the bright side, but that's a personal preference and can be adjusted through exposure compensation. This camera also offers 2.7K at 60 frames per second, which I find to be more of a usable resolution than 4K 30, or 1080p 120, which again, more frames per second means smoother video. The only resolutions where stabilization is present though are in 1080p 60 and 1080p 30. This limitation is very common among umbrella cameras in this price range. The real winning format for me though is 1080p 60, and that's because of image stabilization. The Firefly's gyro stabilization helps to smooth out bumps and jostles while riding down the trail. In 1080p 60 it makes things a lot more fluid and fluent when I'm bike riding with the camera on my handlebars. The good news is that the stabilization is one of the better ones for the umbrella platform to date. Out of all the cameras I've tested, this camera and the SJ7 Star are the closest. The SJ7 Star has lens correction a bit more accurate, so when the stabilization is correcting side-to-side jostles, there isn't any weird wobbling, whereas the Firefly 8S still has a little ways to go, but it does notably better than the ThiEYE T5e. The one thing that isn't as good as the SJ7 Star or the ThiEYE T5e is the audio quality. The audio quality from this camera is a little bit more muffled and harder to understand, but that being said, it is loads better than many of the other cheap cameras I've tested. Here's what it sounds like.
Alright, so this is an audio test with the Firefly 8S. As usual, I have the camera just out in front of me while I'm filming. It is currently in the waterproof case. This is what it looks like when we're in the forest with it in the waterproof case.
Alright, so this is a video with the Firefly 8S with it outside of the waterproof case. In low light, the image quality from this camera is actually pretty good. It handles noise quite well until it gets dark out, in which case you wouldn't be able to film anyways. One of the features I appreciated from this camera is the auto low light mode. This mode has recently been implemented in the other umbrella cameras as well, and it prevents the video frame rate from dropping below 60 or 30 frames per second in those respective modes, meaning that in low light the video is a little bit darker, but it stays smooth and fluent instead of the frame rate jumping around, causing the video to stutter and skip. The end result is smoother video, but you can always disable this mode if you want brighter video at night. Photo quality from this camera is actually pretty good as well. Since it is a real 12 megapixel sensor, that means there's more detail than other cameras that lie about their resolution. While photo quality is definitely not this camera's strongest suit, it does a decent enough job to capture details on leaves in trees, although I find that in lower light it gets a little bit blurry easier than some other cameras I've tested. I haven't yet mentioned my favorite feature of this camera and the reason that I continue to use it over the ThiEYE T5e or the SJ7 Star, and that's the camera's beeps. I have the camera mounted to my helmet or in a place where I can't see the screen or the other lights quite often, so having loud, audible beeps in the waterproof case is just so helpful. I can't even explain how much easier it is to know that this camera is recording versus the SJ7 Star or the ThiEYE T5e, which beep so quietly you can hardly hear them. And this feature alone makes me want to use this camera over others. Speaking of the other cameras, let's just do a quick video comparison between the ThiEYE T5e and the 8S. Video during the daytime is very similar. At 1080p resolution, they're almost identical. In some cases, the exposure is a little bit different here or there, but for the most part, they're so similar that it's hard to tell. The major differences between the two cameras are the improved user interface of the Firefly 8S, the better stabilization of the Firefly 8S, and the louder beeps of the Firefly 8S. Where the ThiEYE T5e wins though is in audio quality. Its microphone is louder and picks up more when it's in the waterproof case. Compared to the SJ7 Star, it's almost the same thing. The SJ7 has a little bit more refined video quality and slightly sharper details, but that's because of the way it processes the video, not because of any real technological difference. I find that the still images from the SJ7 Star as well as the audio quality are better. Also, there is less haze, probably because the lens is better quality. However, I prefer the user interface and the loud beeps of the Firefly 8S, so that's why I continue to use it more than the SJ7. In terms of size as well, the Firefly 8S is an actual GoPro size, so it fits into other GoPro gimbals, whereas the ThiEYE T5e does not. I hope this video was helpful, and if you have any questions about these cameras, please leave them in the comments below and I'd be glad to answer. Thank you for watching.